everyone, everywhere who is tuning in now, which is June 26th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Eastern, wherever that might be for you and what time in the universe in the future. Welcome. My name is Ryan Erickson. I am the host of BetaCodex Live and have been for the last 6 episodes before today. And joining me again today, as usual and as expected, is the inimitable Niels Pflaeging. Niels?
Hi, Ryan. Hi,
Yes.
everyone.
Hello, hello. Okay, so the topic of today on BetaCodex Live is from one of the principles. And the title of the episode was You Can't Predict the Future, Don't Try. Okay, I put a LinkedIn post out there a week ago, got some traction around people who maybe from the Scrum community, Agile community, related to the project management domain. It's like, well, no. You can predict the future because I can forecast, and we are setting goals for our teams and for our project. We're doing this stuff. What do you mean we can't predict the future? Of course we can predict the future. So then I come to my handy dandy BetaCodex brochure and the 12 principles. Principle number 8, being what we're going to talk about today, is presence of mind. Preparation, not planned economy. That's the principle or law as you see it. There's a narrative there that I'll share and then we can kind of go in from it. The future is a complex problem. You can neither predict nor manage it. Certainly not by planning ahead over longer specified time intervals. A system can, however, be designed in a way that its parts, teams, and interactions will always act in a spirit of presence, with awareness instead of following orders or plans. This type of system will be ready for any possible future. So, those are the words to describe the principle. And so, preparation instead of planning. So, the first question is, why does this principle deliver an agile organization at scale, let's say?
Yeah. Wow, that's a profound question, right? Does it deliver? Does this principle deliver an agile organization, or does planning just destroy agility, right?
Yeah.
But certainly, it's one of the founding principles of the whole codex for me, because
Mhm.
as a corporate controller 20 years back, or until 20 years back, I did a lot of planning and budgeting, and that idea of not planning, it took me 3, 4, 5 years to fully wrap my hand around that. So I understand everyone who says, like in response to your LinkedIn post a couple of days ago, oh, no, we need planning, or planning can work if we do it well enough, or we need some forecasting. It took me so long, really a couple of years, to get rid mentally of this, to understand, figure out for myself in my heart as well that planning was complete bogus in organizations. That I understand that there is some, difficulty for people to wrap their hands around. But the idea is really to, like in a market economy, you don't need any planning. You don't need any forecasting. Actors respond intelligently in the here and now, in the presence of mind, as we like to say in that principle that you just read out. So in a market economy, you don't need planning. Similarly, in an organization, you don't need planning. It's quite fucking obvious, as the Americans would say. And but we are so deeply into socialist, Stalinist command and control thinking that we think without planning, the world it will explode or implode. Which is funny enough, in Scrum, the Scrum Guide even talks about planning a lot too. We might get to that later, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sprint planning and so on. We use the word all the time. We are really stuck. It's like a heroin addiction, this planning thing. Yeah.
So if we don't commit the time and energy to planning, how are we supposed to prepare for the next day, the next day, the next day? And what is it? okay, if not planning, so what? I've been taught to plan for years. I'm a project planner, planning coordinator, and then you're telling me that I can't plan. So what do I? How do I prepare
Yeah.
for the now and the next day and the next day?
Yeah, and preparation indeed is already a good part of the answer. Once we just start to distinguish, and this requires some discipline, and we can only invite all listeners and what people who watch to start distinguishing between planning and preparing, right? And planning means to fix expectations in advance. Preparing is to make yourself fit, like as a in sportsmanship, sportswomanship, and everything in between and beyond, of course, is meant as well. Sportswomanship, menship, in between and beyond, everything is covered here. So in sportsmanship, as such, you have to prepare your body physically, yourself physically, and the eventually equipment to be fit for anything that might happen during a race, a competition, a game, or whatever it waits for you, right? But you do not plan. You have the aim of winning, for example, but you do not need to plan. Any planning would make you probably lose the race, lose the game. So preparation means to achieve fitness, and that's different than planning, which carries the spirit of steering the activities of others mainly. And this is very different in the private life. You can say, oh, I'm planning my vacation. That's okay. I mean, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. But in organizations, to plan means to program others and to steer others. And that's where the trouble starts. Yeah. So we should, of course, do preparation as individuals and teams in organizations. That increases agility, but planning reduces agility. It's a very simple formula, really.
And and this is very interesting too.
And of course, all of budgeting is shit, right?
Well, all the budgeting is shit.
Is it? But for example, sprint planning isn't sprint. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. I'm a big interrupter. Sorry.
That's fine.
Of course, sprint planning is the wrong word. A sprint in Scrum requires preparation for the 14 days. If the sprint has 14 days, and that's cool. That's good. A good thing to know. You know that there is a time frame of 14 days. You prepare for that as a team among yourself, not to steer others, but to prepare yourself. Prepare is something you do for yourself. Planning in organizations is something you do for others. It's like rape, really. So it's a terrible thing.
So then this group preparation, right, is almost like team practice, if you think about it. And then workout. And this is something we did not. Now, again, we didn't plan this before, but organizational fitness, and that we are fit for purpose. What is the purpose? Our purpose is to create value, and we are preparing ourselves for collaboration with each other to achieve this purpose and this result, this market success. Again, we're talking about the mono-maximization. We're talking about being successful for ourselves, for others, for the planet, and disciplined preparation. The idea of disciplined preparation is something that is a universal concept, and that at least as I've discovered, around achieving mastery through disciplined attention to a particular practice or domain. But I mean, you can't see my bass there, but to playing bass guitar, to coding, to gardening, to cooking, all of these things, these are preparations, so, and that we build our knowledge and we build our mastery so that we can perform together. And that to me is a much richer, again, as I was saying, that's how we achieve fitness. Our team is fit. Our team performs well together. And in that performance, then we are prepared for what might happen in a complex, uncertain, unpredictable, market. So that's my word.
Yeah, and this is also connected to the notion of deciding and agreeing. When you plan something, you end up deciding for this. When you prepare as a team, you end up agreeing on certain boundaries, probably, that we will respect. Yeah, as you accept in preparation that the future is uncertain, you will not decide anything. Those grandiose terms wouldn't even come to mind if you have a preparation-based mindset or attitude in teamwork, right? So you accept that now you can agree, prepare, get fit, get ready for any possible future. By the way, yesterday I saw a documentary about Anne-Sophie Mutter. Do you know her?
No, I do
A
not.
woman musician, one of the greatest violinists on earth. In the documentary, they showed her as a girl, 9 years old, 10 years old, and talking about her expectations, interviewing her parents and so on. And people related, like John Williams, who is now a collaborator, a film composer, and now being a collaborator, and so on. Has this woman, who is one of the greatest artists in classical music, did she ever plan something? No. It's all about studying, practicing, preparing, and no planning. You need to, in fact, all planning destroys other people's capability of focusing on the here and now and what's necessary.
Okay, so again, bringing the musical metaphor into it. Yes, so when we prepare ourselves in practice to perform a piece of music together with an ensemble, that is the perform. We are preparing to perform and be in spirit and ensemble with the audience and ourselves. Well, there also what am I going to practice? What piece am I going to practice? Don't I need an agenda?
That's the purpose thing, right? That's the purpose thing, to pick the piece or practice, to piece the art, to pick the craft, pick the art, pick the topic. Yeah.
So if we have a product, let's say we have a software product, we're a small again, we'll take the perfect example of a Scrum team that has all the skills and ability to deliver into the wild by itself without interdependencies on another team. That's a unicorn concept as well. That doesn't necessarily exist anywhere. But so so we can argue about that. But a self-contained team delivering to the market. Yeah. So and in Scrum, they have a product goal, right? And there's a product goal, a sprint goal, and those kinds of things. And then we build a product backlog, which is everything we want to do over time, or it develops over time. Again, the spirit of Scrum, I think, is very well in line with what we're talking about in this adapting to change, which is one of the Agile values, is adapting to change or responding to change versus following a plan.
Oh no, I mean Scrum. Scrum ultimately was it came about, or it was inspired by Toyota practice. It's no surprise that it's very aligned with Beta, because Toyota is one of the best Beta cases in everything, pretty much at Toyota. I mean, I cannot put my hand in the fire for everything Toyota does, right? But if you look at the greatest practices they have, like Nemawashi, A3, Kaizen, and so on, it's all very Beta, and it's all very much based on this notion that you shall not plan. Don't try. It's ridiculous. It's a nonsensical effort. So all this time that we use at least once a year to plan for the next year, or for strategic planning, is equally hilarious, or canvas planning, as I would like to call it, to give it a damning name.
Canvas planning at what level of abstraction?
Canvassing, filling filthy
the business model canvas
forms. Business model canvases. And there are myriads of canvases right now. I'm not sure.
I know.
I've seen them all. Learning canvases. It's all plans, and more plans, or declarations, even worse, declarations. And also forecasting. I mean, most forecasting, I know several German companies are doing lots of forecasting now. They say that they do very little planning, but they do forecasting. I know a bank, for example, that does forecasting every week. They have fixed weekly or bi-weekly meetings to do forecasting in a bank. When nothing is produced, you don't have to buy iron ore to produce a technical product tomorrow, or to ship out a washing machine tomorrow. In a bank, everything is virtual, pretty much. So why the hell would you waste your time on forecasting? And the simple answer is forecasting, planning, canvassing, all this agile scaling, coordination, all this coordination and this positioning thing. It's merely about controlling people who you don't trust. So we're back at theory X, misunderstanding of human nature. Yeah.
So okay, but on a larger scale, when we are in so we are, well, let's assume we are in a beta organization. We have a periphery of, we have a cell structure, and we have a cell structure, and we have so you have multiple cells communicating with one another to serve each of their markets and their market needs in the periphery, right? So you said this coordination is this coercive. There's a sense, you didn't say it, but that's kind of what I felt. Well,
Central coordination, yes.
Okay. So central coordination is that, we are going to say, no, you do this, you do that. That orchestration, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and the idea of.
But by the way,
orchestra.
that's why it's so. It's beautiful that you just mentioned this. Some leaders seem to love the conductor metaphor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as Peter Drucker already mentioned, we had this in our very first BetaCodex live session. You cited this quote by Peter Drucker, where he says this conductor metaphor of organizations is wrong because a company, an organization doesn't play sheet music, right? So you shall not have a conductor. You shall have teams, ensembles, very small groups, and not a symphony orchestra with 30, 40, 50 people. You shall have small teams, jazz ensembles, jazz bands, kind of things. And they should, when they have the need, coordinate with others by themselves, not being centrally coordinated, not power over, but power with, one cell that needs something talking to the other cell and so on. This dynamic market-like coordination is what makes organizations agile, which makes multi-team organizations agile, and what you need to coordinate between highly autonomous teams.
Leadership happens in the space between people, right? Isn't
and between cells in that instance. Exactly.
Or maybe at the abstract, I think between systems, right? And that a system of me, system of 510, system of markets. And this is the economics of it.
Yes. By the way, another great example, taking this a step further. So people coordinate among themselves without plans. If they don't have plans, they can coordinate it as needed. So a customer order comes in, I call my colleagues, or a team calls another team and makes an agreement on demand. The same can be done beyond the boundaries of an organization, of course. Ernst Weichselbaum, this amazing lean theorist and practitioner from Austria, he developed this idea that an organization should have swinging capacity. The time boxes should be fixed, but within the time boxes, capacity should swing. So it should swing. Yeah. So if you have a sprint, you might of course have the capacity swing by people going on vacation, then the capacity goes down, or by taking in somebody for the sprint to work together with you, alongside with you for just 2 weeks. Yeah. So taking this a step further, an organization might let its capacity swing and thus act in a highly agile, adaptive way by involving capacity, for example, machinery that another company, maybe even a competitor has, or a provider or a client might have. So once you know who has the kind of machinery that you might need when you have peak demand, in order to let your capacity swing, you might outsource the production need.
Well, and if you're following the first principle of team autonomy, you have full authority to make those decisions, to purchase whatever we need to meet the customer, to meet the market need. We can buy here, we can buy internally. If our internal cells are well prepared based on agreements and coordination and agreement between ourselves, if the communication is there and it is rich communication, is transparent, then that flow can happen through agreements to serve a market dynamic.
Yes. And all these myriads, we just gave a couple of examples of flexibility, how to build in flexibility into an organization. This, you can only make this flexibility, this built-in adaptiveness or agility happen in the absence of plans, of budgets, of fixed targets to meet, of incentives. Those are really, that's the problem with also all this OKR shit and so on. It only creates, fixation on targets and so on. It's like testing for school children and so on. It creates a fixation on these things. So you need to get rid of and drive out fixed targets, allocations, resource allocations. Cost management is totally opposed to this kind of enormous flexibility. And instead of trusting teams to prepare well to improve value creation and drive out waste over time, most organizations still try to allocate, plan, incentivize, drive teams.
To drive and this is again the core principle of the value creation network, right?
Yeah.
So
let's drive out the driving. That's my call.
Yeah, we're going to drive this into the market, whether it's the right thing or not, or we're going to sense what's happening and go for it there. So,
And of course, it's a tough nut to crack to say, well, wait a minute. We have an organization, a company of 10,000 or 100,000 people. We should do no planning. How can that work? And I always like to respond, well, just like Handelsbanken, they haven't done any shitty planning for 52 years, right? No budgeting, no strategic planning, no company-wide planning at all. No big forecasting. If forecasting is needed, people do it on a handkerchief and then throw the handkerchief away, keep it for themselves, whatever they learned from the forecasting exercise. But no company-wide stuff around that, which of course creates, and this is embedded in the principle that you read out at the beginning of this session. This creates, of course, a culture of thinking in the here and now, of being conscious of the here and now and what's needed and what the client needs and what value creation needed, instead of adhering to anything.
Presence. Presence and preparation as opposed to planning, as an alternative to planning.
Yeah.
And
of course, people, that means liberating people's intelligence.
Well, and this is also comes into the idea of what are the roles of top management, right? So because there is at this moment in time, there is rampant hierarchy and top-down command and control everywhere, right? And so so there's a sense of much of the leadership literature that I hear about, and I think, and then the folks who speak about leadership in ways that feel like they get the idea. No, not even that.
Not even that.
No. I'm that the golden circle thing again. That's a whole other bit.
But leaders eat last. Never eat alone.
Leaders
Never finish your plate. Always
leaders eat each other. So no, but seriously, the idea of creating the conditions. I think this Deming. I forget. Deming is saying that the job of top management, because that's the language of that, is to create the conditions for this flourishing, this liberation of potential, of capacity and capability. And that I think is that's tough. And okay, so this is why I was coming back to about creating the conditions, that in an orchestra, in your typical world-class orchestra, and there are world-class conductors. Benjamin Zander, the first one that comes to mind, the way he speaks about how he's not in control of the entire orchestra, and these that at best they there's certain sense of authority and respect for authority that we can talk about, but it's the influence. It's mastery and preparation as a conductor of a world-class orchestra. So, or even any orchestra that's worth its salt, that if you're going to stand up there and attempt to spark the creativity or spark the playing, that is this, in my mind, again, we don't have to agree, of course, but that's creating the conditions for beautiful music to happen. And if you have a conductor who's not saying, duh, 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 no, you do, no, what are you talking in rehearsals? If they're just beating people down and saying, no, you have to, that's this coercive command and control. But the musicians, who are up on stage in that performative mode, that creation of flow, and that they're making music with, that they are performing with, and they are not managing those instrumentalists in a 100. We're talking about 150 piece orchestra, a huge orchestra, that some coordination is needed to bring that music from the page to life.
But this is very interesting. But I cannot help myself but thinking of a little but here.
Challenge away.
No, and this is just a slight. It's not even a disagreement I would like to bring up, but a different sound of it, of flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think an orchestra is very similar to an open space conference. Yeah, the real work is all done before the event actually happens. Like in an orchestra, symphonic orchestra, the whole work of the conductor is done way before the actual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and you said something very interesting. You said like the conductor sparks something in the musicians. I think I don't disagree. I don't agree with that fully. The conductor doesn't have to spark anything. Imagine a good orchestra, a decent orchestra. The musicians are all very good. The only challenge for the conductor, as the lead artist at this point in an orchestra, yes, he or she is, you don't have to teach the members of the orchestra, the violinists and so on, anything. They're already excellent musicians. They are well prepared. The only thing that you as a conductor or a musical director in that moment add is your philosophy of how this will play out. How do we do this? Oversimplifying a little bit, fast or slow, loud or less loud. What kind of expression, what kind of fantasy, fiction, story, narrative do we want to connect this? What kind of spirit do we want to give the piece? So, and all this is done, of course, in the exercising, how is that called? The
rehearsals.
Yeah. So in the rehearsals, yesterday I saw another documentary about Yehudi Menuhin, another violinist, and Herbert von Karajan, one of the greatest conductors of all time, German. Sadly, he was a Nazi as well, but still great, one of the greatest artists of all times. And you see him doing the work with the orchestra for a moment, which is very interesting. It's just about, no, I want this must be that way, it must be lighter and so on. But during the, of course, there is an illusion on the side of the spectator that the work is being done there. But the work of defining how to play this out is done before, like in a jazz band, of course. Miles Davis knew it all, and then only when he deviates, then you have to give a sign to the band as a jazz musician, right? But fundamentally, you could play it all along. Nobody has to conduct, and conduction is very, very light. In Herbert von Karajan, you could see that he doesn't do much. It's just like giving tempo a little bit, because the musicians already know what the philosophy of the piece is, of the performance is. So. And preparation is that. Preparation is to prepare so well that in the moment, not much is needed. In open space, you don't need a facilitator during the conference, really, because you just do in the first 15 minutes, you do the thing, you explain the principles, and then it can run all by themselves, and one open space gets smoother over time during a day or two. Yeah. So this also is part of this preparation thing in an orchestra, in jazz band, in open space, even in an organization. The better prepared people are with each other, the smoother the actual performance will be. And that is also one of the reasons why teams in a beta organization should be as long-lived as possible, as durable as possible. They shouldn't switch all the time. You shouldn't take people out and in. You shouldn't micromanage them, of course, ever. From the outside, you shouldn't steer, and you shouldn't, disrupt teams all the time. They should have time to mature with each other to become good jazz combos. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're trusting the instrumentalists in this case, or
The
performers,
artists,
however you
yeah,
want to say it, the
yeah,
artists.
and
That,
not call them people at the front line. I hate it when people talk of people at the front line, and that sounds like in the trenches, First World War in Belgium or France. It's
well,
terrible.
the other word I'd heard that rubbed me the wrong way was coal face. The people at the coal
What the
face,
fuck?
and like,
Cold
yeah,
face. That's
like
the
like
imagery that
coal
we use.
miners.
Yeah,
Essentially,
of course. And usually, probably the image that people have in their head is that somebody's swinging the
the whip,
the whip behind
cracking the
the
whip.
coal miners.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Mm.
it sounds more like slavery, really. And of course, preparation is the idea. And you put this very well. In a beta organization, we assume, in a way, this is just a metaphor, that everyone's an artist or potential artist, and we have to.
Mm-hmm.
If we drive something, we have to drive out the artistry, the mastery out of people, or they should discover the artistry inside them, and of course, team performance options.
And this, again, is coming down to one of my core beliefs about where we are as a working society. In that I believe that the jazz culture of freelance musicianship, that the jazz musicians went through what knowledge workers now, that jazz musicians went through this years and years ago, because it was about that we get better and better and better. We affiliate with the people who, okay, I like playing with you because you know it, you get it. I don't want to play with this dude who just got out of school. He doesn't know anything. So when we'll mentor together, whatever. I'll teach you lessons. But when I want to play the gig, when I want to be a pro, a professional, when I'm going to do it for money, I'm going to do it with folks who I can trust, who they have a reputation. They have a sense of mastery. They have done the preparation. They know the American songbook, all that kind of stuff. And to be a jazz ensemble of 3, 4, 5 people, and they go, they think about what they're going to play. They rehearse. They practice together. In some cases, and the best ones, the freelance ones, they don't need to practice together. Each of them gets the call. I'm going to call Fred and Sally and whatever. We're going to show up at the gig there. But because I know from their reputation, they know the American songbook, and they know, and I know they can sight read like that. And I know that when we come together, they know balance, they can listen, they show presence, all that stuff. That's been part of the jazz culture,
the jam culture as well. Yeah, the jam session.
It since for a long time. But in I think the jazz piece of it, and the studio, and to a certain extent, well, the studio musician culture, folks in LA and New York, Nashville specifically, that they are the ultimate masters of their craft. You know, that because they are exceedingly well prepared. And
you remind me. I mean, you're a bassist, right?
Yes, I am.
So you just made me think of one of these. There are several of these amazing studio bassists who played on almost every record in music history, and nobody knows. Like, did you know? You probably know Leland Sklar?
Lee Sklar, yeah.
Or Abraham Laboriel, do you know?
Oh, Abe.
These people played on everything, right? And there are a couple of others, of course. These people who played with Nile Rodgers and so on. Or the guys who played with Michael Jackson.
Toto.
On the Quincy Jones productions. They are all.
Yeah. And that's
your cracks.
And that is what I think is a key, or one of these core elements of to have a decentralized organization, a beta organization, is that this sense of individual mastery is so important. And that and the idea
and so human. It's I think that's you've been mentioning our times a couple of times, and it's true. We live in. I would 10 years ago I would not have expected this, but we clearly live in times of increasing workforce incompetence, learned helplessness, and micromanagement. It's all going up. And before COVID, I wouldn't have believed it would go into this direction, but it clearly went into this. We see more and more. That's, I think, an explanation why sad, toxic tools sell so well, like Safe and so on, and OKRs, or flight levels. I heard recently that it's apparently organizations are really trying to do this shit. So
Flight levels, we can have a little bit of disagreement.
that's the
'Cause
total
I
dark side. I mean, that's
personally know the folks in there. So, well, there's, well,
it's wrong. Basically it's just this division between strategic,
yeah,
tactical,
that's bullshit.
operational,
That's bullshit.
which was terrible, always has been terrible, is terrible, and now it's just being reloaded with an agile brand, which is terrible. I think it's absolutely flabbergasting, really. And so we live in obnoxious times, and with it, I think we see a trend. I fear that we see a trend. I hope I'm wrong, of growing incompetence and helplessness in people, and people are not even aware that they are not developing their mastery fully at work, that they don't have a chance to do that. So they take their skilled incompetence as normal, as natural. And that, of course, is a danger to our societies as well. I think there's a true danger right now, because the more we stick with command and control, power over instead of power with, hierarchical steering, planning, which is in all these things, like all this agile scaling frameworks, is an incredible amount of planning. So planning is back. It's the dark side, the empire striking back. Again, this cripples capability in people, cripples mastery in people, and I think this goes hand in hand with the growth of populism in our societies as well. So it's no small thing we're fighting here.
Well, so if helplessness is learned, well,
it is.
There is.
It is. Look at small children. They are never helpless.
Well, I know, but that helplessness is learned from somewhere. That lesson is consumed in some way. And again, the nefariousness of what social leadership is. I think that's outside the scope of what I want to talk about today. But this learned helplessness, I think is, oh gosh, what comes to mind, I think when you said that, I almost lost it, was this idea of when you and I were growing up. Yeah, if there was a conflict on the playground between two people, yeah, you hashed it out. At least that you took it. So if there's a bully around, maybe I get beat up, or maybe you have that conflict, and eventually there is a stasis that happens. The social structure. Okay, so we no longer have this conflict, whatever territorial or hierarchical beyond that, but that we have this conflict. What has happened, and there's again, the reading I've done, I can't really put the footnotes in my conversation, but that there has been a rising tide of whenever there's conflict, that the individuals have been from a young age taught to seek authority, taught whether I'm going to call my dad and he's going to come in and complain to the teacher about this other person, or if we get into some kind of you said a bad word, I'm going to call the teacher and they're going to mediate our conflict.
Yes.
And this idea of individual conflict mediation has eroded so far. And I think what we're seeing is a broad social surfacing of that symptom of, like you say, learned helplessness. We are kind of wandering a little bit from the preparation and planning, but maybe not.
By the way, there's maybe let me just add a movie that came to mind when you said that we have lost this, or we have, in many countries at least, in some countries, in Western countries at least, we have this trend to avoid conflict too much. Of course, preparation, this is related to our session. Preparation in a team or between teams requires conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Different than planning. Planning is a conflict avoidance technology. Yes, by separating the authority and having a planning and steering authority, planning for the others, you get rid of much of the conflict. Later on, any conflict after having done the planning and having emitted the plan and the command that comes with the plans, of course, all the conflicts need to be escalated upside. If you get rid of planning, which you should, then the partners in agreements will have conflict occasionally. When trying to reach the agreement, they might have conflict throughout, delivery or whatever they will have conflict. So preparation means being in conflict. It's like when I do sports, I have to run a couple of times per week. I hate it. I have to suffer the conflict, but nobody can force me to run, for fitness. I have to. So
Yeah.
preparation is like saying yes to conflict. Planning says no to conflict. That's terrible. Yeah. So but by the way, a great movie came to mind about this. Parents representing their children, avoiding that the children continue their conflict with a little fighting and bullying and whatever is necessary, which is innocent in children, and the parents driving out this conflict. It's called Carnage. Have you seen that? I watched this as a theater play in London 20 years ago.
I have not.
And it became
Carnage.
a movie with Rachel Weisz? No, with Kate
Rachel
Winslet.
No.
Ralph Fiennes plays one of the lead characters as well, and of course Christoph Waltz from Austria. He plays another lead role. It's a Carnage. You have to watch it. It's not exactly this adults appropriating their children's conflict, and it's terrible. Of course, it's something that you cannot win. So instead of Scrum Masters trying to reduce conflict, Agile coaches trying to reduce conflict, managers trying to reduce conflict, product managers and key accountants, all this kind of stupid power executing roles and all the planning, we should get rid of that and accept that leadership, tension, conflict shall happen between people and teams normally.
Embrace the conflict. Embrace that.
And in some cases, that might lead to growth and learning.
Perish the thought that growth might happen. Oh my goodness. I feel like this is a good place. There's some good energy here we can take into the Zoom session. Yes, for those of you who are watching live, and there are 3 of you right now that I can see, come on over to betacodex.org/live. Niels and I will continue this conversation there. Or who knows, we will dive into the uncertainty that is the system you will create with us, and we will go wherever you wish to go. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, as we say in open space. I'm Ryan Erickson, and this is Niels Pflaeging. Thank you very much for the precious gift of your time and attention. Be well and be more beta.